Hey there guys, DMO73 here, bringing you a feature match for the week, and this time I'm trying out a feature match on Untap. I am joined by my friend Delaney Bristow. She is playing her take on the Lumia Command list that is kind of going everywhere ever since Atlanta, kind of coined by Ontail Gaming, which eventually won the event, and I am playing my take on Black-Green Faerur, which was the other major list of GP Atlanta, kind of brought to the field by Team Outerworld. So let's go ahead and see how it goes. If you can check the life totals for Delaney is in the upper right corner, and my life total is in the upper or bottom right corner. I'm not doing an overlay because obviously Untap does it for us. So go ahead and we'll see how it goes. First stone for Delaney is that Deep Woods. Playing that first turn Sacred Elf, I'm going to say I don't want you to go ahead and ramp, because if that deck gets ahead of me ramp-wise, it can be a problem. So I'm going to go ahead and energize and use a True Blade at the end of the turn to go ahead and kill it. Go to my turn, draw another Final Battle. Not the best card right now. It can be helpful, but I still have to see my darkness sources. Get that Spirit Collar Elf, which lets me go in and get an Elf token. This is really great because now I'm kind of ahead on curve, and I can kind of threaten pseudo cancel spell will potentially. This matchup is very much about the ramp. If Faerur can kind of keep Lumia's ramp in check and answer the Lumias kind of as they come, he definitely has a much better matchup overall against against the list. It can be a very uphill battle for Lumia. It's just a matter of trying to keep that curve up, keep the curve down for Lumia, and keeping all of their draw power off the board as much as possible. Place another Sacred Elf. I say at the end of the turn I'm going to go ahead and True Blade that, using Faerur to untap my Spirit Stone. Again, I want to keep her curve as low as possible here. She's going to try and Otherworld Dreams that, and I say, okay, I'll take advantage of it and try to play this Planting Beans. Try to get a Faerur into the grave, and she actually decides to Severing Winds that, so I'm not necessarily sure how good of a play that was. She emptied her hand, and now at this point I kind of get free reign, and all I was doing was trying to send a card to the grave, especially since I have another one in hand. Now, she couldn't have known that. You know, there's no way for her to be able to tell, but the beauty is now I can just go, okay, well, I'm going to try to use the Planting Beans and get that Faerur Resonator to the grave, which is really great for the Faerur list. If you can get that guy, it's kind of your draw power, because the deck doesn't run really much of a form of draw power. And if you guys want, you can kind of check on the side the log of what's happening. So like you can see, I am still shuffling my deck for all those searches and whatever. I can't play any of the cards in my hand because I have no darkness sources, but again, if I can manage to land that Nameless Mist, I can definitely potentially follow it up with a Final Battle or lots of other things. I'm also in a position where I can flip next turn and get that Faerur out. The Lumia deck does not necessarily have a way to deal with a wide board because it doesn't run darkness, but it can go into stuff like Moasaurus to lock down the stones if Faerur flips too early, so I have to be careful. Plays a Sacred Elf into a Sacred Elf, flickers the Sacred Elf at the end of the turn. Pretty standard move there. Then decides to try to True Blade one of my elves. I say, okay, well, in response, or she has it before my draw, I apologize. And at which point I'm like, well, there's no point in even trying to recover my stones. It doesn't do anything. Main reason she's doing that is to try to keep me off of being able to flip that turn. It's a very smart move from Delaney. Still no darkness sources. I'm checking to make sure I shuffled my stone base. Untap is interesting where you have to shuffle your stones separately. It doesn't auto shuffle them like it does your main deck. So I'm just kind of make sure, but then I'm like, I'm pretty sure I did. I'm not gonna worry about it. I'll just scroll back down. I'm gonna go ahead and play the Sacred Elf, try to spend some time ramping and kind of again bluff that I might have something there, as well as make it so that next turn I can try to flip kind of regardless. She's going to go ahead and True Blade at the end of the turn, which I kind of was expecting, which is fine for me. I'm trying to get rid of those True Blades. as much as possible, just so I don't have to deal with them later. True Blade is a very good card in this format, regardless of what, green deck you have. There's a lot of 2-drops being played. Low-cost Resonators are very common with Otherworld Dreams flying around, and 500 damage is pretty relevant, especially with a Remnant. Goes to Delaney's turn. I'm gonna go ahead and recover. Calls a stone. She doesn't have a red source, so there's no way for her to be able to flip. She does manage to get that Lumia. Excellent card. It's the kind of main engine of the deck. You see me over here, I'm trying to explain to Delaney how to do the draw 3 face down from her deck, which is something that you can do pretty easily on Untap, which is excellent. And she can even make it so that she can see those cards and see them herself, but I can't. So, Untap, again, has really come a long way since the beginning, and it's really good for just play testing online, playing against other people online. You can find matches pretty much anywhere, so it's good stuff. So now, essentially, she played a 2-drop, got to have it stick, and then got to draw 3 cards for it. It's good stuff. I'm gonna go ahead and play that Tama, get him some more draw power. Could play that off the Lumia. It's just, again, once Lumia gets this kind of card draw engine going, it has just a lot of value, because if that Lumia for any reason, gets tapped, once he's used those 3 cards, he can use the Lumia ruler to flicker it and then draw into 3 more cards. There's just a lot of potential. I'm gonna go ahead and spend the 3 and flip into Faerur. She doesn't do anything in response, which I think maybe might have been a mistake. She goes, actually I'm going to, she's going to sack the Tama in response to kill the Sacred Elf. So what I could do there is spend a counter to keep the Sacred Elf, or the Elf token, protected, but I'm like, there's not a ton of damage coming at me on board. I can afford to kind of keep everybody alive, and I can keep these other Elf tokens alive. I'll save the Faerur counters for when I really need them, and I'll still be able to rest all 5 of these guys and bring out the Faerur from my graveyard after all this. Pass the turn there to Delaney. She's going to go ahead and recover. She's sitting currently at a potential 7 will, so at this point in time she is within Faerur's command range. Thankfully I still have all 40 of my life, so that's not a terrible position for me to be in. Her having 5 cards to my 4 is pretty unfortunate. She doesn't really have a way to tap down the Lumia though, which makes me feel a little bit better. She's going to pay 2, 3, 4, play Faria. This is one of her personal attacks. This card is very good for the IU matchup, as well as helping to deal with Faerur, provided I don't have flying. She can just use Faerur to block, or use Faria to block Faerur or whatever else, and she won't take that first damage. It's pretty nice. Thinking about things, seeing if maybe she's going to do something with the rest of her turn. When she decides to pass the turn, I'm going to go and say, once she does decide to pass the turn, then I'll bring that Faerur out from my graveyard. She's going to leave. She's thinking about playing another card, and then decides, nah, she's not going to waste it. She's going to go ahead and try to flicker the elf, and I say, in response, I'm going to go ahead and bring back the Faerur from my graveyard. So the reason why this card is so great is because 1, it helps with draw power, and 2, it's like a free 10/10, you know, once you've kind of flipped with the Oberon here. And every time it comes into play and every time it swings, you get to reveal the top card of your deck. If it's an elf, you get to draw it, so it immediately helps to kind of help the deck keep up with the draw power, the pure draw power of the Lumia deck. So I'm going to go ahead and flip. Call for Stone. Main reason is because I need a darkness source for sure at this point. Additionally, having Unseen Pressure and Nameless Mist and lots of other stuff. So I do finally get a Darkness Stone, which is great. Not too worried about whittling down the Lumia's cards, to be perfectly honest. I'm mainly... what I'm doing here is I'm trying to keep the green will up to be able to play the Sacred Elf potentially, and I'm going to try to go ahead and final battle the board. I'll pay 16 life here and 2 will, which will do -9, -9, to try to just say, maybe I can use a Faerur spell, or if he does Otherworld Dreams, I can just do the Unseen Pressure to try to kind of kill the Lumia anyway. Definitely opening myself up here to a Severing Winds play, but that's fine, because in my mind, I'm taking 2 cards out of her hand. Which is fine with me. She is going to go ahead and play the Otherworld Dreams. And I think about using the Unseen Pressure, but instead I'm like, you know what, I actually think... Debating between Nameless Mist and Unseen Pressure, but I'm like, well, I'll use the Nameless Mist, because if she doesn't let it resolve... Yeah, so she uses a Severing Winds from the Faerur there, which is fine for me, because now I can keep the Unseen Pressure for later. And the main point of that being that if I do that, if I keep the Unseen Pressure for later, then if he does decide he needs to try to flicker that Lumia to try to draw more cards, then I can just kill it in response to the trigger, and he can RFG 3 more cards. I try to play that Sacred Elf, and she says, I'm going to use that other Severing Winds that I have to just kind of kill it. So I'm emptying her hand here, which is fine. Flip that top card of my deck. It is a Flying Cloud. So I'm going to try to get rid of the ramp as much as possible, to try to keep her off of a Faerur's Command potentially, as well as just keep her number of creatures low. She says, yeah, that's fine. I'm going to go ahead and take it. I'm going to try to swing in for 1 damage to negate the first damage, to get rid of the first protection of damage from Faria for just 1. She says, okay. Swing in for the 7. She blocks with Faria. I'll pump up Oberon so I don't lose him. Therefore, Faria is going to prevent the damage there. So at this point, Faria is not dead, but Faria is very much unsafe. And with having the Faerur counters, having her only having 1 card in hand, that kind of stuff, I'm opening myself up. Being in a maximum of 2 cards next turn, I'm opening myself up to having a really good amount of pressure, especially since she doesn't have a way to flip over Lumia. So I'm actually going to swing my elf token, try to kill the Faria, because I have the pump-ups, is the thought here. Faria is the one causing the real problem, and Lumia and Sacred Elf by themselves aren't really causing a problem against this board state. Delaney's debating whether or not she wants to block with stuff. Blocks with the Sacred Elf. I say, you know what, that's fine. It's just going to go ahead and die. And then I'll attempt to swing the other Sacred Elf into the Faria. You know, I'll block with the Lumia. I'll burn 2 counters here to go ahead and kill the Lumia. Main reason why I didn't just burn the counter as it was, to pump up the other one to be able to kill the Sacred Elf, is I needed to be able to threaten the Faria with the last token. And so at this point in my mind, my thought is the only things that save her are a Lumia to draw into cards that really just buys her some time, and a Faerur's Command to be able to swing with Faria, recover, swing again with Faria. So with only 1 card, I'm not terribly concerned about it, because I do know the deck only plays like 2. Primarily, I take the 9, going down to 15. I catch my life here, and then, as luck would have it, Delaney's going to start tapping down all this will, and I'm like, wow, you really did happen to draw into it. she drew into the Faerur's command to be able to recover everything and swing at me for all of that damage. So she just happened to get the one card that she needed to be able to close out the game despite me being able to come back. And so we're going to go ahead and move on to the next game. See how that goes. So moving on to game 2. I'm going to be on the play here, get that Spirit Caller Elf. See, I have that Unseen Pressure as well as a True Blade. And I did get a Darkness Stone first turn, so I'm feeling very comfortable about this start. I also have Otherworld Severing set up, so I'm just kind of playing this early game cancel to just say, like, if you're going to try to do something, I'm just going to go ahead and cancel it, or kill it, or make it so you're just not going to get that value out of it. She accidentally draws 2 stones to play. She's going to shuffle the other one back. Delaney does decide to get a little greedy here. She's going to energize and try to play that first turn Lumia. I mean, I guess I can see the play, especially if she potentially has a second Lumia and Severing Winds in her hand. The idea would be that, you know, if I try to Otherworld Dreams it, she can just play the other one, and then she can cancel the second card. But I don't think she was expecting the Unseen Pressure. So in response to the Lumia trigger, I'm going to use that Unseen Pressure, which is going to kill the Lumia, and then Lumia's trigger resolves. So those top 3 cards still get RFG'd, but they get RFG'd face down. So in a real match, Delaney wouldn't be able to look at those cards. So keep that in mind when you're playing with other players. If you try to unseen or kill Lumia in response to the trigger and it works, Lumia's trigger still resolves and they can't ever look at those cards. If they accidentally do, that is a judge call. Now, for kindness sake, please just try to remind your opponent that they have to RFG face down and can't look at them, because you would hate to see your opponent kind of get a game loss intentionally for that, just because maybe you didn't catch it. But, you know, after the fact, if they do kind of flick their, you know, they're not really thinking about it and they look at those cards or try to flip them over at some point, that is after you've warned them, that is something you should call a judge for. So I'm kind of explaining to Delaney how to be able to RFG those cards. Takes those 3 face down, Lumia's gonna die, and I'm back to being in a very strong board state. Cover, call stone, hit another black silence. I'll use one of those to go ahead and play the Sacred Elf, setting myself up for a next turn flip without and still being able to maintain pressure with open will. Calling that stone. Hit her, can get the green-white countdown stone. Plays a Sacred Elf. I'm like, that's fine. Seeing if she does anything else for the turn. Attempts to play a Divine Bird. I say that's okay. Divine Bird I don't really care about. I'm going to go ahead and at the end of the turn kill that Sacred Elf. Thinking about whether or not I want to kill the Divine Bird too, but in my opinion there's not really a point. The Sacred Elf is the more threatening one, and Divine Bird is just a 1-drop 100 blocker. It's not really hurting me for a ton of damage, and I don't want her to draw the card. So I'll True Blade at the end of the turn. Go into my turn. Use Sacred Elf to tap for a will. And then use my other 2 elves with Faerur to recover and then tap a stone. So I still leave a Darkness Stone up. And Delaney at this point actually is going to quickly scoop, because I get to go into my deck, get a Faerur, threaten, open the Severing combo, and just so much pressure at that point that she can't really keep up. So I'll move into game 3. So as you can see here, this is my hand after mulligans. It's not ideal, but I do have some early game ramp, but some potential board wipe. So I'm feeling okay about that. Flying Cog can also be helpful with early game pressure if she doesn't see that Lumia, just to use Faerur the two Faerur Ruler and Faerur Resonator to just push in damage very quickly, which can sometimes be what you need in this matchup. First turn Blasting Waves. She goes ahead and just passes the turn, which actually feels pretty interesting to me. It probably signals that there is a True Blade waiting for me on the other end of this turn, but at the same time I'm like, well, I might as well just try to push a little bit. I'll play the Spirit Caller Elf. Attempts to get my elf token. Just that's fine, I'll let that happen. And then at the end, I'm gonna go ahead and pass the turn. Setting myself up for a nice easy turn 2 flip potentially. She's gonna True Blade the elf token, and I'll say, well, since that's already happening, I'll go ahead and recover my stone. I could have also played the Sacred Elf just to, get even more ramp out of it, but I didn't really necessarily see the point. I could have also played another Spirit Caller Elf, but if that gets Severing wins, early game Severings in this matchup can be pretty devastating. You want to make sure that single card sticks so I can get the ramp ahead. Sacred Elf comes out, don't really have a way to stop it, so that's fine. Decides to, or is thinking about playing another card, but I think she might be concerned about opening herself up to a True Blade as well, so she just passes to me. I do happen to top deck a True Blade. Definitely could have done something before upkeep with it, but again, I decide to kind of play a little safer. Try to play a Sacred Elf. See if I can get that to stick. Use my Energize. To try to play a Flying Cloud. I personally think I should have tried to Energize into the Spirit Caller, but maybe I think my thought was I'll use the Flying Cloud to maybe bait out Otherworld Dreams potentially. In response to her trying to use True Blade at the end of my turn, I'm just going to tap down Sacred Elf and my Elf token to recover a stone. This way I have access to Otherworld Dreams and True Blade potentially next turn. At the start of her turn, I actually probably should have used that True Blade, just because then she only is at potential 3 will, and I'm more likely to be able to land a Severing Winds of something successfully. Recovers. This is just kind of a good example of why the early turns, controlling the ramp of the two different decks, using True Blade and saving your cancels for the appropriate cards is very important. The first 3 or 4 turns of this matchup usually determine who takes it. So you just gotta play really tight, and you gotta do your mulligans well, and especially on black-green side, you gotta hope your stones work out for you too. Both decks are extremely good, but both decks can definitely pull away from the other very quickly without really having to worry about anything. So Delaney does a really good play here. So she attempts to play 3 for the Sha Wu Jing. So this is attempting to lock me out a little bit, making it so that I can potentially get punished. My Otherworld Dreams become super expensive and things like that. So I'm going to Otherworld it, and then she set it up to be able to play that Lumia because it costs less. So now that Lumia is just going to get to resolve, and she's going to draw 3 cards and immediately get way far ahead of me. She'll be at a total of 6 cards between the two, and she'll be able to recover that Sacred Elf at the end of the turn to be at 2 will. This was a really strong play by Delaney. I could not allow that Sha Wu Jing to resolve, because in this matchup, spells are super important, and if all my spells are super expensive, and combined with the fact that she'd be so far ahead of me on will, I would get massively blown out. Like, that Sha Wu Jing resolving right there would probably be practically game. But by also having the Lumia, she forced me to have both Severing and Otherworld. And she still had potential will in her hand to be able to answer Severing itself as well. Very strong play by Delaney, and it rewards her greatly. She's going to use the other stone to get another Sacred Elf, which again I can't really answer. I could True Blade it at the end of the turn. Definitely foolish of me to not but I'm trying to save that True Blade to potentially kill the Lumia, knowing that it's probably not going to happen, but at least I can try, would be the thought. Recover, get the first True Blade to resolve, call for a stone. There are 5 cards in her hand, so it's pretty likely that she's going to have what she needs to be able to play the Lumia, but the thought is if I can try to maybe bait it out or pull it out somehow, that maybe I can get this final battle to resolve. Severing wins. Has 5 damage on it, so I'm going to go ahead and say we'll play it risky. I definitely don't need to do 14 here. I think I forget that I've already done it for -7. But I'm like, I'm just going to pay it all anyway. I only technically needed to pay this for a grand total of like 6 will to deal -3/-3 to everything. The Otherworld's going to come in to stop it. I'll say, well, I get a Spirit Color Elf then. Woo! Not really doing much. Gets me another token. All in all, just not super effective. Now what I could do here if I wanted is I could use that last green will to make one of my elf tokens fly and kill her Sacred Elf, at least kind of try to get a little bit ahead of the ramp. But instead I just say I'll play it safe and not open myself up to being kind of attacked on the crackback for my Sacred Elf or anything, not giving him like a free target for his Lumia. And instead I'll just Planting Beans to get Faerur to the grave to set up for next turn. So definitely a risky play on my end, and it didn't pay off, unfortunately. If it did pay off, I probably would have been back in this game in a big way because of the Faria flip or Faerur flip next turn into the Faerur Resonate Oberon into the Faerur Resonator and just a board full of creatures. Unfortunately, now I have to deal with the fact that Delaney's probably going to get upwards of 6 or 7 cards after the end of this turn to my 0, because she has no fear in swinging that Lumia right now. Nothing I could possibly do, you know, unless I suddenly had a True Blade engrave, which I don't, and she'll see that. There's no reason for her to not just swing in with the Lumia, flicker it at the end of the turn, and draw 3 more cards, putting herself up to 6, especially if she potentially has another Lumia in her hand, which potentially puts her up to 8 cards total between the Lumias and her hand. There's just so much value to be gained off of it that there's nothing really much I can do at that point. So yep, there's the second Lumia. She's going to get to flicker the other Lumia at the end of the turn, be up to a grand total of 8 cards to my 0. At that point, there's no way I can resolve really anything outside of doing Judgment and stacking up a board in hopes that I can, you know, maybe try to avoid a push through. Also, with so many cards and so little cards in my, you know, 1 card at a time in my hand, I'm easily set up to be Lumia's Judgment or Faerur's commanded next turn. There's just so much value to be gained off of it. With 6 creatures on board, even if I load up a board full of tokens, you know, she can swing with the Ataractia, the Divine Bird of Ataractia, and then Faerur's Command. And just that by itself is like 1200 damage, putting me at 1000. So at that point, if any of her creatures connect with Pierce, I'm practically dead. It's just not looking good for me. Out comes Lumia, another card. So like I said, 8 cards, 2 will to spend it with, easily enough to be able to have a Severing and Otherworld Dreams from somewhere in that pile of 8 to cancel whatever the card is I draw. Massive board full of creatures, and if I want to bring Faerur back from the grave, I'd have to tap a bunch of them down, so like, I'm just not in a good spot. If there's a Faerur's Command anywhere in there, I'm pretty much dead. And I happen to draw into a Sacred Elf, which doesn't help me at all. And my thought is I'm going to go ahead and tap these 2 elves just to be able to, you know, kind of threaten the extra will, because I'm going to grab the Oberon anyway. In response to that, before Faerur flips over, she could sack the Tama to kill my other elf, but again, Tama existing by itself, since I've already flipped, just makes it so that she has more creatures to be able to Faerur's Command with Myth. She does actually decide to use the Tama to kill the elf token, which I guess also kind of makes sense, because now she's forcing me to be able to have to tap all of my recovered resonators to be able to bring back Faerur. So in that case, she has an advantage. I'm still not necessarily sure if that was the right call, but we'd have to see. Having only the 1 card in hand, no cards in my remnant, I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'll go ahead and just try to play this Sacred Elf then. Or I think about it, I guess. Maybe I'm trying to threaten another World Dreams or a card, because Sacred Elf by itself isn't really going to do much on the board. And a recovery. Thinking about whether or not she wants to flip here. Flipping really wouldn't get her much. She doesn't really want to flicker anything on my side of the board, although flickering an elf token does cause it to just be killed. 1, I can make it protected, and 2, even if I wanted to, I could just protect it with Faerur. So she's going to spend, I think, all of her will. She's like trying to find out exactly what card she wants to grab here. Thinking she accidentally called a Scone from her top of her main deck, or called a card to play from her main deck instead of her stone deck, but we get that 5th stone. One thing to keep in mind when you're playing the Lumia deck, if you are playing it in real life, a very easy way to track your Lumias is to put the cards face down underneath the represented Lumia. You gotta be careful here because you don't want to like shift them around too much, but it can get really tricky to sort which Lumias are attached to which cards. And so if you saw like on the live stream from Atlanta, that was how most of Untap was doing it. They'd put the cards from Lumia underneath the Lumia resonator. That's just the smoothest way to do it by far. It helps you keep track of the cards, it helps you easily see when that Lumia is run out, all kinds of stuff. Swing in for 1. I could choose to block with the Faerur if I wanted. She actually chooses to run into one of the elf tokens, I think because she wanted to draw a card. Not really sure what the value to that was, but maybe she's hoping to just fill her hand up even further. Because she also could have just drawn the card if she just swung in the air. Maybe she was worried about Faerur blocking it, I don't know. Also, getting rid of as many tokens as possible potentially helps her with the Faerur's Command play. Tapping 5 here, we see Moasaurus drop, which is going to lock down my stones, keeping me at 1 will for the next turn. Definitely not ideal. Thankfully, one of them is the Spirit Stone, so I am going to be able to sacrifice it to draw another card, but again, I'm working off just 1 will, and it's not really going to help me much. So to kind of recap the board state here, Delaney is quickly pulling ahead in both number of cards and resources. I have a lot of really puny resonators. I am going to be able to bring back the Faerur from the grave, and he's going to draw me potentially a second card. But the problem here becomes Delaney has 7 cards to my 2, potentially 3, and I only get access to 1 card. There is a final battle there. I can't kill everything. And I'm just going to have to draw that final battle for turn. Can sack the Spirit Stone to see the next card after final battle. Might as well. There's no reason not to. Because I can sacrifice, you know, it's not going to recover anyway with Mosasaurus. And at this point, I do draw into a Nameless Mist, which is great. If I do catch the stone needs to be tapped. Don't worry about that. I do call the Nameless Mist, which is great for potentially if she has cancel spells in her hand. If I tap for a stone and get another Darkness Stone, maybe I can final battle to get the Lumias off board. But it doesn't let me see what the Lumias have, so there might be cancel spells in that Lumia pile of stuff that I'm just out of luck and just screwed over by. Now, one strategy here could be that I tap Faerur to call for stone. If she tries to swing with Mosasaurus, I use Faerur to block it, and then use my other elf tokens to bring back Faerur, kind of creating a soft lock for blocking. It's definitely something I can do. It's just a matter of do I see that in the moment? And again, even in that sense, a Faerur's command just completely obliterates me, and at this point in time, she has the will to be able to cast Faerur's command with only tapping 1 resonator next turn, so all of them can just be massive, and that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,000 bonus just from Faerur's command. Yeah, it's just not pretty. Not to mention, she can easily swing with Mosasaurus, like, beforehand. Faerur would be able to trade with Mosasaurus, which would be nice, but again, she has no reason to swing unless she's just going to go ahead and say, well, you're just done. And there's a Kage's Moonbeam Butterfly, which I have to pull that out of her hand to potentially stop her from bringing out Faria, because if she is able to bring out Faria, then at that point, the games are literally just over and I can't do anything. And with 2 cancel spells in her hand, another world, and a severing, there's nothing really I can do. So I'll put the counter on the Faerur, make Faerur a little bit bigger, and at this point I'm just being silly. Yeah, I think at this point I'm actually just going to go ahead and call the game for the sake of time. This is just a matchup where, like I said, those first few turns are super important. Delaney is sitting on so many cards, and knowing that she has Otherworld Dreams and Severing Winds, there's just really not much I can do. You even see I get a Commander of the Crowd here, which is great, but that Mosasaurus, now that I've swung Faerur, is practically safe, and it will just be able to lock down my 3 stones. So yeah, both of these decks are very, very good. If you're interested in playing at a high competitive level, you should definitely check out these lists. So kudos to Team Outerworld and Team Ontel Gaming for coming up with them and bringing them to Atlanta, and for their success there. Deck lists will actually be up later this week on the channel. I'm hoping Friday and Saturday, if not Saturday, Sunday. So link for those will be down in the description when they get posted, or on the channel, so be go ahead and ensure to subscribe, like the channel as you can. You see that Mosasaurus, I'll block it with an elf token, it's gonna get flickered, it's just, you're actually gonna see a second Mosasaurus drop here from Delaney, which is another personal tech of hers, just having the second one to threaten with all that will. But yeah, that's actually it for the match. Congrats to Delaney for the win, and huge thanks to her for being able to sit down on Untap and play with me. If you guys are interested in playing with me on Untap more, you can check it out on the Patreon. I do try to get games in with my patrons as much as I can. Go ahead, like I said, share out the video, comment down below what you think of the matchup and these decks, and until next time, this is DMO73 signing off.
Huge thanks to the patrons of the channel. You see their names on the screen here, some of them, and the rest are down below in the description for their support of the channel and the content. If you want to get a chance to get your name in the screen here and access to our private Discord server, please consider supporting the channel on Patreon by clicking that little P on the screen. Thanks so much. See you next time.